is for a mature audience and may be viewed as inappropriate or insensitive to some. Listener discretion is advised. The intention is to share conversation of like and unlike-minded individuals as they try to be the best them they can be in a life full of challenges, searching for love, acceptance, and positivity. Call 669-241-1422 and share yourself or catch up with Sweet Baby J for an anonymous face-to-face interview. Feel free to call in with questions, stories, thoughts, or anything you would love to talk about and share. Nothing is off the table when talking sweet with Sweet Baby J at 669-241-1422.
Ladies and gents and ladies, once again, you are here talking sweet with the one and only Sweet Baby J. As always, a no-face, no-case scenario where we allow our guests the opportunity to share their identity or not. We have a stallion here that I met while in New York. So let's kick it. Young man, would you like to share your identity or not?
Yeah, I'll share my identity. I'm AJ Galloway.
What's your social? Since you're saying everything.
So social media, you can find me on Realm Healer 32 on Instagram and AJ Galloway basically on Facebook.
There you go. Yeah, it was absolute pleasure meeting you. I mean, it's weird. You're a bartender, correct?
Correct.
How often do you get people say, I don't know what I want, can you make me something? And is that annoying when you hear that?
To be honest, I am different than a lot of bartenders. I personally know when people come into the bar, their intention usually is to not think. Usually they're getting off of work, they have places to go. And my job, I've been in the service industry for over 24 years, and providing a level of service, knowing what the intention of a guest is my best priority. My thing is making sure to ask certain questions. What are you in the mood for? What are you feeling? And I think as a mixologist and a bartender, one of the things is really honing in on what your needs are and creating the space to make exactly what you want and guiding you along that path and exciting you when you get the finished product and you taste it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed. Thank you so much. That level of service is hard to find nowadays, but I think that sets me apart from a lot of people in the business. Because, I mean, how many times have you gone to the bar and the bartender's like, what do you want? Or they're extremely busy and it's almost like you feel like you're a burden or, you're not seen. So I always look at it like this. When you come into whatever establishment I work at, you're coming into my house. We've known each other for years and you're automatically a friend of mine. You're automatically family, and I think that spiritually, that's the way I look at just people in general, is that we're all family. Wow. And so I treat everybody as such. And from that experience, it lowers sort of people's inhibitions. They're much more open to be candid and open with me. And we just are able to create this beautiful experience. And I think that feeds into my spirit and blesses me. And I also bless other people the same way. So that's why I do what I do.
I got to tell you, mission accomplished, because I only knew I wanted Hennessy. You made me a drink with Hennessy. Till this point, I still don't know what was in it, but it was spectacular. So much so that I came back there twice and you weren't there. So I was like, forget it. But it was that good. And then when I came back there and I saw you, I was like, wow, whatever that was, keep them coming, because it was delicious. So I appreciate you and your mindset on taking care of someone.
Absolutely.
You've been in the industry for 20-something years?
Yeah.
Wow.
I got into it when I was 16, actually. I started in Orlando at Steak and Shake and on East Colonial. And that was like my first introduction into like the service industry. I remember I was working drive-thru and this guy was like, man, you have such a personality. There's just this energy about you. I really think you should start serving. And I was like, yeah, but I'm young. And he was like, yeah, but you got it, man. Like, you're going to be fine. He was like, I'll teach you the ropes. And he did. I thank him for that, because he was one of the best trainers that I've ever had. He taught me the ins and outs, really, how to scan and how to be of service to everybody and to multitask, to get as many things done as you can.
So what is the difference between a mixologist and a bartender, if there is a difference?
We're all mixologists in a sense. I would say a mixologist is somebody that definitely plays around with different tinctures and different things to really create a cocktail that is not of the norm. I mean, you have your regular, in Florida, Long Island iced teas are really popular. But then when I moved to New York, you have the classic cocktails. You got your Negronis, and you have your Campari Spritz, and you have, whatever, your Vespers, and knowing your way around the bar and creating different drinks just because, I've created a few and just played around, and that's I like playing. And I think that like bartending should be fun. It should be something, anything that you do in life, you should be able to put 100% in, and you should play. I think that's the biggest thing is like, it's a job, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it as a chance to really just play, interact, have fun.
You enjoy your job.
Enjoy my job, and then I get blessed by making some decent money. But that's not what it's all about. But it helps. I'm not gonna lie.
Well,
definitely helps.
You've been in this for quite some time. You said since about 16.
Yeah, I started serving. It really wasn't until a few years ago that I started to bartend, and I served for many years. And I had moved from Orlando to New York and was serving at Puree Harbor House in Battery Park City, which is no longer in existence. But before they shut down, before COVID, I say BC, basically what ended up happening is that my manager came up to me and asked me, he said, "Hey man, like, we're getting rid of the servers and we're just having bartenders, but you're our top server and I don't want to lose you. Would you like to try out bartending?" And I'd been sober for about 5 years at that point. And I told him, I said, "Listen, let me go home and meditate on it, and I'll get back to you tomorrow."
You said you've been you're a bartender, but yet.
Yeah.
So what were you? You were sober from what?
Sober from alcohol. I've been in recovery for almost 8 years, and my sobriety date's December 14th, 2014. So it's one of those things that it's crazy. Being in the service industry, it was very easy for me to basically get what I wanted. That was sort of the fun life of the service industry. You're in, you work your shift, you go drink after work, you BS about all the stuff that happened that day, and you go home. And it becomes a lifestyle for a lot of people in the industry. And for myself, it became crippling at a certain point because I was definitely overusing, and it was becoming a hindrance in my life.
Was it just alcohol or?
No, it wasn't just alcohol. There were other drugs. I grew up in Orlando in the 90s, and I was definitely, I consider myself a raver. That's one facet of who I am, and I've been big in the rave community.
So rave parties, drugs are a really big part of rave
absolutely.
Parties? Wow.
Absolutely. I mean, like back in the days, Orlando used to have like Firestone and the Kit Kat Club and Harold and Maude's. This is when Wall Street was like a cul-de-sac. You had Zuma Beach, and there was a lot of. It was crazy. It was a crazy time. Club H2O and Barbarella's. And
at what age? At what age did you start raving and using drugs or consuming alcohol?
This is what happened. I want to preface by saying I love my family and we have a great relationship. But as in all families, there's growing up as a kid, everybody tries to find themselves. And I definitely found myself at a very young age. And sometimes opinions aren't always the same. And I was kicked out left, whatever you want to consider it, when I was 14.
Wow.
And so I really didn't have anywhere to go. And at that time, the Wall Street community had a bunch of, I would say, mismatched people that were down in that area. There were definitely from gutter punks to ravers to goth kids to intellectuals. It was just a beautiful sort of scene. And some of those people were homeless and some of them weren't. That became my family. And that's really when I started to consume alcohol. It's funny, my mom had given me $40 and I went down to the Subway sandwich shop on Wall Street.
I know the one.
And I fed all these people. And I said, "Well, you guys are going to be my family." And this guy came up to me after and he said, "Hey man, how much money do you have left?" I said, "I got $10. And he said, "Well, why don't I go get you a quart of Old English 800?" And I was like, "Well, I don't drink." And he said, let me tell you something. One, you have a jacket on and that's all you have. And you're going to be sleeping outside. So this is going to keep you warm at night.
Wow.
Number two, this is going to suppress your appetite because you're not going to be getting a lot of food out here. And number three, this is also going to get your mind off of the street. And so I was sort of like 3 steps into alcoholism. That was like my introduction. And so he went to go pick up, a drink for me, and I drank it, and it was terrible. And I think I threw up, but I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like other people. I had complete freedom. And so it was the first time in my life that I didn't have structure because I was raised in a very, I wouldn't say rigid because my parents were really loving but very religious as well. So it was a very structured, my dad went home and worked. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so you couldn't get away with a lot of things. And so now I had complete freedom. So of course, at that age, you want to go crazy. And that's sort of what spawned me moving into that aspect of really using drugs and alcohol. That's where I got exposed to ecstasy and acid and all of the things that,
And the partying life didn't make it any easier.
Was a lot. I'm not going to say that it made it any easier because I was already at a bottom. Once you're homeless, there's really nowhere else to go but up. Yeah. The only other thing is death. And that was, there were moments to where I was considering taking my life. I remember one time.
How did you get through that?
Well, what ended up happening is that there was a woman, I was sleeping on a park bench on a Sunday at 8 a.m. I'll never forget it. And it was about maybe 6 months to 6 months, 7 months since I was on the streets. And she came up to me and she nudged me and she said, "Are you hungry?" And I said, "A little bit." And she took me to a Burger King and she sat with me and she prayed with me. And she said, "Within a week, you're going to be off the streets." And I looked at this lady, and I have a strong belief in God. But I looked at her and I'm like, "Ma'am, I really want to believe that, but I really don't think that that's possible." And I ended up running into my father downtown, and I was wasted almost a week later. And he said, "Are you ready to come home?" And I was like, "Well, I was never ready to leave, but I was in bad shape." And he was like, he got me into a rehab program.
Wow.
And that's not where I stayed sober. Trust me. That was a whole nother crazy experience.
From what I hear, sobriety is a never-ending journey.
Correct.
And you would attest to that. You agree?
I would 100% agree. I definitely understand that if I pick up a drink, all bets are off. It's like I tried it. I've gone down that road. And I think to kind of pull it in back to bartending, I think the reason why I'm able to separate what it is for me is because I've already gone down the road. I've gone through relapse before, and it led me down a path of almost death. So I look at bartending as a job and a skill that I have, but I know that if I were to drink it, it's poison to me.
So you never drink? Poison. You never drink?
I don't.
Oh.
Mm-mm.
Well, congratulations.
I don't. That was one of the things that my boss, when I came back the next day, I told him, I said, "Listen, I'm willing to work and be a bartender as long as I don't have to taste the drinks. I will learn the measurements. I'll do whatever I can to do that. But I just can't taste the drinks." And he's just a wonderful man. And he was just like, "I would never put you in a position where you would have to do that." And he respected me. I respected him. And I'm still working for him. He's just been one of the most amazing bosses I've ever had because he values his employees and he listens and he understands, but yet is firm on things that need to be done. So,
that's pretty cool to hear an employee speak in such a way about their employer and to know that there's a mutual respect that's taking place that is not just about the job, but also a personal life that's impacted here.
Right.
That's pretty dope. Your life actually started spiraling when you became homeless, when you were sort of kicked out or left your parents' house.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it got back on track when your father saw you and said, "Yo, listen, we can't be like this."
Somewhat. I would say that because I was still young and I had a lot more party phase in me. It's like the rehab wasn't going to do it. Matter of fact, in the rehab, the counselors ended up going to jail for attempted murder. It was a lot. There was a lot that went on in that rehab when I was in there. So it wasn't the best place for me at that time.
Wait. We're not going to skip over that, bro.
Yeah, listen.
What happened? And what is rehab life like? Like, I've never thought about that.
Okay, so I'm not going to shout out the rehab. It's in Florida. It's in the Orlando area. But it is a counseling center. And it's where they send kids that are looking, their parents, they pay to send them there that are dealing with drug and alcohol.
Do you live
issues.
there, or is it in-house?
Yeah, it's an in-house. So you're there from anywhere from 3 months to however long. So I decided to go. And so you're around like about 16 guys, and the dorm is sort of open, and each room has 2 bunk beds. So there's 4 people to a room.
No co-ed, no guys and girls.
No guys and girls.
Oh.
No, it's just guys. I think they have a girls' side. I don't remember that. I just remember it being just the guys. So I go in there, and of course, being young and we're all kids, we're finding ways to try to buck the system, trying to sneak stuff in or create some punch out of some orange peels and fermenting them. It was crazy.
Prison drinks.
Prison. Yeah. You know what's up. So it's like, I'm just like, doing whatever the most that we could to try to get as messed up as we could. But there was this guy that ended up at the rehab. I'm not going to say his name. We'll just say that this guy was a nuisance, to say the least.
That's someone that worked there, or someone that was...
No. He didn't work there, but he was a nuisance. It was somebody that came in, basically, that was dealing with issues.
Okay.
And I think that he had a lot of outside issues outside of drugs and alcohol. But every single night, he would wake up at 3 a.m, and he would wake all of us up, and he would run up and down the hallway butt naked, just screaming out. So after a while, everybody's getting pissed, and they're like, listen, we got to do something about this, but we can't do it as the ones that are there. What ended up happening is one of the counselors had asked me to lure him into the bathroom, and we were going to hold a blanket party for him.
Oh, snap.
And so the blanket party happened because the counselors were kind of over this guy after a few months.
So the counselors were in on it too?
They were in on it. They were the ones that set it up.
Wow.
And so since they were watching us and we were just to take their orders, that's what happened. So we ended up almost killing this kid. I got my few licks in, but I ran back to the room, but it got pretty bad, and they banged him up pretty bad and then threw him out. He was in a coma, I think, for 2 weeks, and his jaw was broken, legs were broken. I mean, it was bad.
What was used?
And somebody had picked up a fire extinguisher and started beating him with that. Yeah, it was that. I'm telling you, it was intense. The problem being was that I lured him into the bathroom, but when the cops came, my face wasn't messed up. So they had to beat me down to make it look like I was fighting him. So I had to take my licks in just to cover up. It was a whole thing.
Oh.
Needless to say, one of the guys, everybody thought that I was going to break and say something, which I was like, dude, I'm already invested in this. But one of the guys was up on a felony charge, and the cops had threatened that if he didn't tell them what actually happened, that he wasn't going to be able to see his daughter. So they used that as leverage, and he ended up breaking and exposed the whole thing. So the counselors ended up going to jail for the incident. So that was not a typical rehab experience, but it is what happened.
I mean, I'm literally here with my jaw. Like, wow, you go to rehab and possibly a murder charge. Like, what the hell?
This is not typical. These are things that have happened in my life that I look back and I'm just like, what in the world happened? But that was a specific place. The funny thing is that after I got sober, I ended up speaking at that counseling center. It was so funny to go back and just see the place and actually speak to people that were struggling, because I had been there. I've been in that rehab.
So that's your way of paying it back.
Correct. Absolutely. Because I understand what the struggle is. I mean, I struggled for over 20 years, really trying to hone it in and get sober. At some point, I tried to attempt sobriety later. I was in my 30s and I failed, and I just knew I couldn't do it on my own. I didn't know what to do. So I was able to find a program that helped.
Wait, I want to go back.
Millions of people. Mm-hmm.
So the guy that got beat up, did he ever sue them? Because it sounds like he should be sitting on some good cash right now.
I don't know what happened. I just know that there was jail time. There was
Wow.
jail time for the counselors. I don't know on the other end whether I was just glad that it was over. And when I got out, my biggest thing was reconnecting with my friends and partying and,
You're lucky you
you
got
know,
out with your life and not prison time.
well, because we were under first of all, like I had only hit a few licks. Second of all, we were under the direction of the counselors. The counselors were the ones that told us to do this and
Oh.
they were in on it. So because we were under their care, we were not held liable.
Oh.
That makes sense?
Yes, it's like a corrections officer.
It would be different if we had just did it. The counselors had come in and they did not know. But because they had orchestrated the whole thing, we were minors, they were held liable.
Holy hell.
Yeah.
Holy hell. So going back to bartending,
Mm-hmm.
because that's something, woof. Now,
Yeah.
when you're there, right, you're not one to indulge in the spirits.
No,
And
not at all.
You've been on your journey. How
Yeah.
do you engage someone that let's say a patron of wherever you're at, how do you engage someone that seems like they may have a problem or they may be going too hard, or how do you even interact with someone like that?
It's so crazy that you asked that question and I think that's a really good question. I've been blessed to have an intuitive nature about myself. I do a lot of meditation, but to hone in on somebody that might be struggling, and because of my personality and because I'm such an open person, people feel comfortable to talk to me. And in that sense, there's been a few times to where I've had some deep conversations with a few patrons, and I've been able to be open about a little bit about myself, just enough to where, I was just like, well, hey man, listen, if you want my number and you want to give me a call, I understand exactly where you're at. I'm here for you. If you need anything, but it's one of those things to where I also know that my job is my job.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm over serving, that's a whole problem.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is making sure that people are
Safe.
still toe the line, because you never want to see anybody have to go through drunk driving. Luckily in New York, especially living in Manhattan, most people don't drive. So you can take a cab very easily,
Yeah.
or catch the train or whatever. But there's, you want to watch out for people because we could be held liable.
Exactly. I always hear that, or I have heard that bartenders or mixologists are also therapists, and it sounds
Correct.
like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
you're over there, do you ever get like a single guy that's telling you, "Hey, listen, this is what I'm going through. Dating life sucks," and then you got a female that's like, "Hey, do you ever do play Cupid as well?"
I open up conversation immediately. Like that's just the way it goes with me. Because I think that there was a guy, for example, that came in the other day, and he sat down, and I could tell he was stressed. And I'm like, "Hey, what's going on, man? How are you?" He's like, "Man, it's just been rough." I'm like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Well, it was my birthday. My dad wants to do this. He wants to go hiking. I really didn't want to do that for my birthday. I'm late. My friend is supposed to show up, but like he's upset at me." And I said, "Okay, take a breath, breathe real quick." I said, "So your dad wants to spend time with you for your birthday, and you don't like hiking." I said, "I get it." I said, "But the precious time that you spend with him," I said, "Dude, life is but a blink of an eye."
Yeah.
And I said, "Although you might not like hiking, it's the time that you're spending with him that's important." And I was like, because you don't get that time back. You don't. And I was like, and as for your friend, you're not alone. You got a friend that's willing to go on this journey with you. And although you're late, you're right on time, because everything happens within a specific time, and you're right where you need to be, my man. So like, let's just start there. And so that set the tone for the rest of the time that I spent with him. And afterwards, his friend ended up showing up. And afterwards, he was like, "Hey, man, thank you so much. No worries. Like, it's all good, man. Have a good day. He's like, I'm coming back to see you. I got you, bro. I can't wait to hear how the hike went."
See
you
that?
know?
So you have everybody coming back looking for you, right?
Isn't that the point?
Hey,
You know?
hey, listen, I was there for your birthday, man.
Yeah, you were.
There you
Yep.
go. That's pretty dope to know that, one, you've had your issues with alcohol and substance abuse, but yet you still work in the field in which you provide
Yeah.
alcohol. It shows a lot of restraint, and I'm not even sure the word, but to stay consistent on a positive journey, knowing where things can go, is pretty cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think that's the part of it, because it's not just bartending for me. Again, I think the social aspect and the being able, I'm of service. I'm being of service to somebody else. I'm providing that for them. I'm providing an experience. I'm able to interact in your life for maybe an hour. And whatever's going on, I got you. We're here together, and we get to share in that moment. And a lot of that can be extremely life-changing. I've had moments that have been life-changing. And I met this one guy now at the bar, and I ended up going to Peru and having a spiritual experience there. And he opened the door for that. And I just said yes.
When you said a spiritual experience, what type of spiritual experience did you have?
So I went down to Peru, and Mother Ayahuasca basically had called. And
Wow.
I said, you know what? And this is something, I preface by saying, because, there are people that are, I don't want people to get the wrong idea, but I've still been sober for 8 years, and I talked to it with my sponsor, and I said, listen, this is something that I need to do spiritually. And it's not, a lot of people, they look at certain things, and I like to say plant medicine, because it's not, that's exactly what it is. It's not
a drug.
It's not a drug in a sense. People look at hallucinogenics and they automatically label it as a drug, and it can be used as one. I mean, you can still abuse certain things.
You can abuse water. I mean, really.
Yeah, hello. Honestly, yeah, I mean, you really can. But I think that going into an experience with such depth, because before you even go and take it, there's a special dieta that you should do, and a fast, which is no sugar, no salt, no dairy, no processed food, no sex, no masturbation.
Whoa.
Oh yes. Whoa. Oh yes. Yeah. You are surrendering yourself to you're coming in pure. I almost look at it like this. In the biblical days, the high priest, before he went into the temple, had to be pure. There was a sacrifice that had to be made. And such is the same way I took this journey, as going into the sacred space and understanding that there was a sacrifice that had to be made if there was going to be the answer that I needed. And Mother Ayahuasca, people have had some experiences where they had to purge. I didn't have that. Through my sobriety, I've worked through a lot of my traumas and issues that I've had to do. And of course, on a daily basis, it's been a thing. But my question, or my reasoning, was trying to find what my purpose was. I think that was the biggest thing, and the intention that I went into is like, what's my purpose? What am I here for? Bartending is great, and I love it, but I know that I'm meant for something more, and I know that there's something deeper. Yeah, I did. And one of the direct connect things that she had sort of revealed to me was, you keep asking, what is your purpose? Do everything with purpose. I've given you spiritual gifts that you sort of shied away from. And so what was shown to me was where I'm at now in my life. And then she moved it around and said, let me show you what it could be. And it wasn't about the house or the car or whatever else. It wasn't about that stuff. But what I felt and saw was fulfillment. And that right there, I was like, that's what I want. I mean, that's why I do what I do. It's for fulfillment.
Yeah.
It's for that. And so I was like, she was like, so go play. You can do multiple things. You can talk to many different people. You can delve into some of the gifts that I've given you. Don't shy away from it. Just do it. And it was almost like an affirmation that I needed. And it almost gave me permission to step in, to be right. And it sort of alleviated those fears of, well, I'm a little older now. And all of that stuff got thrown out the window. And it's like, once it was framed as just playing, it made it seem so much lighter.
You know what's crazy? So I did an episode about ayahuasca. Ayahuasca, correct?
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca. And the young lady and young man that I talk about, first of all, the original topic wasn't even about that. We're only going to talk about breakdancing and capoeira. And they
Right.
shared this experience with me. And one of the things that they said is that when doing that, it's possible that you could be throwing up and defecating at the same time and having this type of experience. At that point, I said, yeah, not for me. Did that happen for you, or that?
That was not my experience at all. I think that people go in thinking that that's what's expected. And I don't think that's the way that it works. I think that, mind you, there are people that are struggling with addiction. There are people that are struggling from sexual trauma. There are people that are struggling from different things. And I think that to facilitate working that out of the body, sometimes that is necessary. And the spirit knows exactly how to maneuver. It's like going to a doctor and it's like, well, let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of that. And so the purging might be necessary in that sense, but the purge itself it's not a bad thing. And it's something that's necessary for growth. That was not my experience. And I think part of that was because a lot of the things that I had, I guess the universal truths that were basically shown to me while I was fasting. It was crazy because 6 days before I had to leave to go to Peru, and I've been excited about this for months, and I've been fasting for about 2 weeks at this point. 6 days before I had to go, I got COVID.
Oh, damn.
So now it's on a Tuesday, and I'm like, I'm off of work now. I had time to reflect, and I'm at this point to where I know that if I don't test negative for COVID, I'm not going on this trip. So I could have thrown away the dieta and said, you know what, this isn't happening. I'm just going to go about my life. This wasn't for me, and that's it. But I was already invested, and I'm like, I feel like everything happened exactly the way that it needed to for a reason. I'm just going to have faith.
The case.
I'm going to have faith. I'm going to stick to the diet, and I'm going to have faith that on Monday, when I take this rapid CPR test, that it's going to come back negative. And so I went to go take it on that Monday. And as I'm swabbing my nose, I feel it burning. And I'm like, oh man, I'm done. I'm done. And I'm on the phone with my friend. And he's like, AJ, I said, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm at home with COVID. And I'm like, well, listen, if I'm not able to go, I'll go over to your place. I'll get to spend time with you. If you need anything, I'll be there for you. At least I'll get something from this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The girls came back and they said, AJ, both your tests came back negative. You're able to go to Peru. And I said, hold on one second. I stepped outside and I started crying.
Wow.
And I mean, it was a nasty cry. And he's on the phone with me and he's crying with me. And he said, I told you were going to go. And I said, I got to make another phone call. And I called my dad and he said, how did it go? And he hears me crying. And I said, God, it came back negative. I'm going to be able to go. And he said, I'm so honored to have you as my son and to watch how God is working in your life. And immediately I'm just breaking down. People are looking at me on the street. I don't care. Like, I don't care. It was one of the most beautiful experiences that I've had. And I think that it was really good for my sobriety.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Like it really centered things in. And I'm not suggesting that people run out and go take ayahuasca. I think that's a personal journey. And a lot of people, and especially like with newcomers that come in and like, they want to gravitate towards anything. But like, this is something that after 7 years, I knew that it was something that I needed to do for me and really have like spiritual experience on a deeper level.
What is your life like, your relationship like with your parents throughout this? And do you have siblings or with siblings or your other family members from then to now? What is the relationship like, knowing what you've been through?
I have, going back from when the relationship, it was scarred for a long time. I held resentment towards my parents for what they had done and all of the things. And we had a relationship, but I really wasn't close with my dad. Like we always butted heads. And I think that he was trying to guide as a parent and I was trying to show up for me and just be me. And we butted heads constantly. He wanted to see me grow, but I was always trying to prove to him that I could be a man. So I didn't need his help. I didn't need it. I would do anything to not ask him for anything. And I think that put a strain on our relationship for 20 years. It did. And it wasn't until I got sober and I started looking at how he was as a man. He was an extremely hard worker and he provided for the family. We went on family trips every single year. I tend sometimes, especially when I was using, to look at the negative things and reject the positive aspects of people that were in my life. It's just like, oh yeah, this happened to me, that happened to me, but I couldn't see all the good and I couldn't see my side.
Do you think there was a lot of blaming?
Of course, because it had to be somebody else's fault, not mine.
Yeah.
Like, this is the reason why I am the way that I am. This is, you made me this way. If I wouldn't have gone through this, then this wouldn't have happened. That's a whole lie. That's a whole lie. That blame game don't get you very far.
Where you're at now, you accept responsibility.
100%. 100%. Matter of fact, what moved me to New York is I was making amends with my dad lives here in New York. My mom, she lives in Orlando. They're still married, but he came up here for business. So I came up and I said, I want to take you out. I went up intentionally to have this whole amends process go down, but I took him out to the restaurant Puree where I ended up working. When I took him out, I got a job offer and I had prayed about it. And I said, God, if this is where you want me, give me a sign. Give me a sign. If New York is where you want me, you're going to have to show me something that this is where you want me. And just visiting, I go in and I get this job offer and he says, listen, can you start Friday? And I said, I live in Orlando. He said, listen, send me your resume. Whenever you want to move to New York, you got a job.
Wow.
And I looked at him and I looked at my dad and I'm like, what is going on?
Dad, did you set this up?
It was crazy. It was crazy. So we left. I didn't even eat there. I just left and my heart skipped a beat. And I knew at that moment that it was time. It was time for me to have a real conversation with my dad. And at that time, what we discussed, I told him, I said, man, you have done so much for me. And I was so blind to all of it. I put a wedge in between our relationship. And I know that, and I was only concerned about myself. I said, if you would have it, I want to be able to reestablish a relationship with you. I want you to see me in a new light, sober. You haven't seen that since I was 14, 15 years old. So if you would have it, could I stay with you for a few months until I get on my feet and move from Orlando up here and take this opportunity and see where it goes? And he looked at me and he said, I'm proud of you, man. Like, I would love that. Wow. And right there, everything changed. We met at a certain place, and because there was a little bit of humility from me, and I was able to recognize who he was and what he did and instilled in my life and the values that he instilled, we looked at each other completely different. And our relationship and family relationship has been strong ever since.
That's so dope. That's so dope. I'm pleased that you've had the opportunity to enjoy those blessings of a newfound relationship with your family, not just your father, but your family. That's and with yourself, the most important relationship ever.
Most important. Most important.
Man, listen, man, AJ, I gotta say, it was an absolute pleasure meeting you. I'm glad we were able to cross paths. I'm glad you're the human being that you are.
Oh, thank you. Likewise.
No, well, you are right. I am quite amazing, but
man. Oh my God.
But really, I hope you're wherever you're at, I'll be visiting. Heck, I'll be coming to New York often. Wow.
And I'll be down in Orlando because I visit Orlando as well. My mom's still down there. So I still have friends down there. My mom's down there. My brother's down there. I fly from New York to Orlando quite often. So.
Hey, hit me up when you're in town. What, you know something?
Absolutely.
There is one part that I never asked. What about relationships, kids, or any of the sorts? Are those things in the cards for you?
I would absolutely love kids. Dealing with relationship, it's funny because when I went to Peru, I ended up falling in love with this Peruvian gentleman. And the funny thing about it is that at the end of the day, it was something that I hadn't felt since I was 14. And I didn't think that it was actually possible to have these feelings and have this strong spiritual connection and all of those things. But the one thing that I realized in my life is that the most important person is me. And setting boundaries is so important. And so I got back to the States and asked him, I said, listen, I would love to spend Christmas with you. Tickets are a little cheaper in January, just saying. I was going to take care of it. I was just like, whatever. But he got upset about it not being on Christmas, which I didn't say that it wasn't going to be, and assumptions. And I said, you know what? Let's just leave what was in Peru in Peru. The one thing I don't do is I'm able to navigate pretty well with being extremely open and honest in relationships, and also setting those boundaries and letting people know exactly where I'm at. And I haven't gotten to that point to find that person that I want to spend the rest of my life with. I'm open to the possibility. I want kids. I think that I would be an amazing father. But until then, I keep building me.
We were about to wrap it up, but now. So now, because you said a gentleman. Now, was this some of the issues that caused conflict with your family when you were younger, that maybe you had a sexual preference that they didn't agree with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being raised in the church and also being kicked out of church for my sexuality.
What kind of church was this?
It was funny. It was Assemblies of God church, to be honest with you.
I don't know. What is that like?
I would say non-denominational,
okay.
in a sense. But yeah, my youth pastor basically tried to pray the gay away, and then, which, okay, I get it. I get it. I've been raised in church for a long time. I've read the Bible. I understand what it says. But the reality of the matter is that I can't change my sexuality. And I wrestled for many years praying to God, why? Like, could you change me? Is this like, and the reality was I wasn't broken. I wasn't broken. There were aspects of me. I think that what ended up happening is that the damage that was done from the church and is done to many gay, bisexual, lesbian people that are in the community of preaching hatred and telling people exactly where they're going to go. It stifles any growth from spirituality. The whole goal of spirituality is to have people grow, not to shun them away from God or any higher power. And
they try to pray the gay away.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they laid hands, which I'm big into energy work, and I really don't like people laying hands on me that I don't know exactly what they're dealing with personally, but it was causing more damage than good. And at one point, the pastor had said, this is causing more of a disruption in the church, so I think it's best if you go. And I stopped him. Now, this is at 14. I stopped him and I said, you do realize that if you turn me away from Christ, my blood is on your hands. If you're ready to accept that responsibility, I'm ready to walk.
Wow.
And he said nothing, and I turned my head and I walked out the door. Now, was that the right church for me to go to? Probably not.
More than likely not.
Probably not. But I still had a strong faith because I'd already seen God's work in my life. I'd already had a relationship. So that relationship wasn't going anywhere. Regardless of what anybody else said, I still have my relationship because that's personal. And I can't deny the things that I've seen and experienced. Those things are already solid.
So you have your relationship with God, but with that church, it was just...
Oh, that was done.
Yeah, it was toxic.
Done. Once that happened, I was like, okay. But always the question being, am I enough? Am I worthy? Because I think that a lot of people in the community, especially, they feel like they're not enough because they've been rejected by so many people. And what does that cause? That causes people, I mean, the way that I looked at it, well, if I'm going to hell, might as well let it be worth it. You know what I'm saying? Let me just do whatever the hell I want to do because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because of who I am. It doesn't matter. I'm already done. I'm not winning in this situation. There's no sign of redemption because my sexuality isn't changing. That's just who I am as a person. And who I am is not enough. It's not enough. So I was just throw my hands up and just let it go. And so
Jesus, take the wheel.
Well, at that point, I think that kept me in my addiction for a long time as well, because it didn't matter whether how my life looked because I was going to the same place anyway. And no man can put you in hell.
You really do feel that the church, or not the church, but this church actually had a great deal of impact on your...
100%. 100%. 100%. It had an impact. Luckily, I was strong enough and had experience enough with spirituality to understand where I stood with God or my higher power, whatever you want to call it. But for me, my faith, how I live my life, even though I am gay, is still, I lead a spiritual life. I don't let other people tell me, oh, you can't be gay and be a Christian, or you can't be this and be that. I do not care.
Do the two
about
even
what people.
Do the two even intertwine? Like, I don't know.
Can you be alcoholic Christian? Can you be
Exactly?
Can you be a pastor that have cheated on his wife, had a divorce, and still be a Christian?
Yeah.
I think so.
I think, well,
So
it's all a journey. I do believe that it's
Correct.
all a journey. So,
correct.
I mean, everyone has passed through their trials and tribulations.
Correct.
And often in churches where you find the most broken people, because
Correct.
everyone is on a journey.
But the whole thing to church is for the pastor to lead people to God, to Christ.
Not away.
So the deal is that once you guide, then they should be able to have a personal relationship at that point and be able to be guided by the Spirit. That is the way that I see it. So if you're guided by the Spirit and you have that personal relationship, that trumps everything, even the pastor. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So that's the way my outlook on it. Everybody might have their opinion, but the way that I lead my life as a spiritual gay man is I hold my spirituality at the top, number one. Because if I don't have that, then everything else starts faltering. I always daily have to pray and meditate. That's the first thing that I do when I wake up is I make sure that I check in. What am I grateful for this day? How am I going to be led? Please guide me and show me how I can be of service to others, because I'm just a vessel. That's it.
Listen,
let your light shine through me, and I let the rest go. Now,
if more people thought like that, this whole world would be a better place.
Absolutely.
Young Stallion, gotta go. I got these kids that are running around, and I got a wife looking at me like, yeah, when are you gonna...
Man, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you for being as great as you are. We will chat again. In
Absolutely.
the meanwhile, this is Talkin' Sweet, where you have the opportunity to share your truth, your journey. And you can always support the show, Talkin' Sweet, on Cash App. That would be $TALKIN SWEET. There is no G because I'm the only G in the room. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram. It's Talkin' Sweet Podcast. On all social media platforms, you can find me at TALKIN space SWEET space 669-241-1422. And at that number, if you would like to share your journey, please text me. We can lock it in. Young man, any last words? My last words are stay blessed. Stay blessed, man. Hey. That goes to everybody out there. Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
That's about it.